What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Vern Supercoach video. Just going to quickly edit this into the front of the video because honestly I missed it at the end. But I really want to just a huge shout out to all you guys that have been tuning into my videos, those that have been subscribing to this channel, because we did just crack the 400 subs mark and I'm honestly pretty pumped about it. It's pretty sick. Really just impressed and happy with how this channel's growth has come, just doing it for a bit of fun here. And I really appreciate all you that tune in. Put your comments down below. We have that chit chat, and I just honestly loved it all. So just wanted to quickly stick this in the start of the video. I really appreciate y'all, and thank you so much for being here. This time it's the round 2 review, and we had a good week this week. 425 points, 556 for the round, going up 8,622 places. So absolutely beautiful. Honestly, one of those things where I talked about it last week where I kind of felt like I'd made a mistake, and it was the difference between starting 1,000 and 11,000. But this week it just sort of redemption went back the other way. The play I would have made if I did start in a better position would have backfired. We talked about it in depth last week with the Derek Walter Jr. angle with Rob Lowe. We definitely thought that was the better play, but just because of the situation, we couldn't really make it work, and I didn't want to waste a boost, so we just stuck with Adams and Days to keep it nice and simple, and we got absolutely rewarded. Adams goes off, scores 75 points. He's our captain. Massive week from him. Derek Walter Jr., quite the opposite. Had not the greatest week. Not a bad second score, but the third game ruined him. And honestly, owners, it felt like he got a bit unjustifiably punished because it just seemed like the right play in hindsight, and it just didn't work out for those. So, yeah, very lucky this week. And that's what you need a little bit in this game, a bit of luck going your way here and there, but definitely a crucial week to be boosting, in my opinion, this week. I think this is one of those weeks where you have to boost because we have to try and maximize the cash. We have to get on the guys with the low break evens. We have to get on those imports that haven't changed in price yet and really just take advantage of that. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this week. Another thing I want to comment on is goddamn Tyrell Harris. He did us dirty. He drops to 42 this week, and it's one of those things that if he dropped that 42 last week, we would have looked like geniuses with our starting team. It would have made up all those extra points I lost, plus 60, because 30 for the, increase in points, but then another 30 for the captaincy. And yeah, it definitely showed that I think we had the right play, and everything made sense. It just didn't work out, and that's sometimes how it happens in Supercoach. Technically, this week, I think Derek Walton Jr. was the right play, and it just didn't work out, and yeah, just so rough for those guys. But really much needed for me to come roaring back, and it's so early in the season. Honestly, 20 points is huge. 20 points is the difference between 2K, 5K, 500. Like, it's massive this early on in the season. So hopefully we can generate the right money, get on the right players, and try and get ahead that way. Key to that is going to be pre-planning, and it's going to be something that we really talk about in this video because there's a lot of different options, but my option probably doesn't look that good this week, but I think it sets me up for a much stronger run going forward. So we will jump to the team. While I am doing that, I'd just like to appreciate all of you for tuning in to my weekly Supercoach video, for your liking, subscribing, for your consistent injection of Supercoach content directly into your YouTube feed. Now, with this, obviously we can see the team. We had great on-field scores. Illy really bit us in the butt. Didn't expect that. Illy was really a deli watch sort of situation, and we sort of talked about it on the Supercoach Hub. Something I do want to address, obviously. I mentioned I'll try and get these videos out on Sunday, Monday night. It's Wednesday, and I'm doing it, so it's a little bit late. I was on the Supercoach Hub on Monday, and I was away on Phillip Island on the weekend, so I didn't get back till late Sunday. And then it was my 7-year anniversary with my missus yesterday, so yeah, just didn't really have time this week, unfortunately. So I promise, as I said, I'll try my best to keep these videos out. There should be nothing that stops me next week from getting out the video on the Sunday, Monday. So I really appreciate all those that are tuning into this video that's a little bit later in the week. But Shea Illy was really Daly dependent. I think Pleb dropped the stat that in the 8 games that Illy's played without Daly, he's actually a 26.2 average, which is obviously really good. And this week, it sounds like it's unlikely Delhi will play one of these games, and that was the huge risk versus reward with Delhi. Is it was control the controllables. We knew there was a good chance he's going to be missing one of these 4 games on this run because of the baby watch. So if he ends up missing one of these games, then that's where we made the correct play. Yes, it didn't feel good last week, but it definitely would feel better this week. And Illy should get a nice spike in his score, and that's something that we have to watch like a hawk this week, because depending on if Illy's playing or not, it might change your decision, because I think a huge decision people are weighing up is Adams versus Illy. I talked about it once again in the Supercoach Hub. Their ownership's basically the same for the competition. Their trades in and out are very similar as well, and I think a lot of people are really tossing up, do we Adams or do we Illy? So that's something that we will talk about a bit later too. Days really consistent. White bounces back massively in the second half of the first game, and then a huge bounce back in the second game. And I'm sure you've already heard this a lot, but yeah, he's scored 23 points in like the last in basically the second half. It wasn't even like halfway through. It was like halfway through the third quarter that he finally started scoring points. He scored like 23, and then in the next game scored 48. Looked way better. Looked so good downhill, and I love them trying to run the ball fast with White, because when he's getting up elevated downhill, it just feels like he's putting the ball in the bucket. Aldridge, a little bit disappointing in his second game. First game really good, second game really poor. Does put a bit of a question mark on him. I do just want to hit the Supercoach Plus. He does have the break even of 10, so he should beat that, but if he's not beating it by much, his break even is going to be pretty poor going forward, and then that might be somebody that we do trade out. Probably feels a bit earlier than expected, but somebody that we definitely got to watch this week to see how he goes. Lepepe, awesome from him. Great score on a double week for his price as well. I mean, this guy was priced at 6 at the start of the season. He's put out 29 points in one game. Like, he's averaging 13. He's doing immense work, which we love. Oliver, good enough. Zakowski, really disappointing. Again, not really doing quite enough. His break-evens, I think, 7. It's not very high. There's a good chance he probably just gets his break-even. Not really going to move too much in cash. And honestly, someone I want to be moving on, but I might just be moving on him next week. Because this week I just got other things happening. This week is a consideration to move on him, and I'll talk about the trade plans that I have been weighing up. As I mentioned, Adams was mating. We talked about Illy. Hickey, good enough. His first game was a bit subpar, I think 13, but then the second game was a 17, which was really nice. And he's just got a better break-even than Glover now. That's put him on a 1 break-even, which is awesome. He'll still make a bit more money. Glover's break-even, unfortunately, he had a 1 in his first game before a 10. He lost a bit of money, which sucks, and now his break-even's decently high for his price, and I don't see him making that. So he's on the chopping block. So we will just go through these trades. 2 ways I want to be looking at this. One of them, I think, something that I'll just quickly bring up. I think there's 4 players that just everyone is going ham for, just because of their break-evens, how good they're looking, their points per their price, which is really, really good. Sorry, I don't even want break-evens. I just wanted all coaches, basically. But we can see the most traded in guys. We can see it's Will Magnay, Montrez Harrell, Warningberg, and Davis. And I think these are all massive guys. Everyone wants them. If we could, we would put all 4 in our team, but it's just not possible. For those guys that are already on Ben Henschel, unfortunately, because I'm not, you are able to potentially try and prioritize 3 of these guys and really set yourself up for a massive round. Me personally, I can only get 2 of them because I've got to worry about the Henschel effect. As I mentioned, I think boosting is super important because we want to be on these guys before they go up. I mean, Warningberg has a 9 break even in a double game week. If he puts together 50 points, he'll be going up close to 40k. Willie Magnay, 27. I mean, this guy's projected to get 71, and that's worth like 40k. Yeah, 44k if he can get it, which he definitely can. And he's definitely someone I'm tossing up just because of that alone. He's going to earn so much money so quickly, and I just want him. But then we do have Trez and Davis, who have the higher break-evens, but they have not just the double this week, the double in the following week. They will still make some money, and I still think they will be really good. But something that other people, you have to take into account when you are making these trades is it's like, yes, these are the 4 we want, but we also need to be thinking about the following week. What happens the following week? Well, there's 3 teams on the double. You have Adelaide, you have Cairns, you have Sydney. And we do have Jackson McCoy returning this week. We do have Taron Armstrong returning this week. If McCoy ends up playing good enough minutes, even if he just scores like 2 10s, that might be someone you just have to get on. you might just have to get on him because he's priced at 558k. So you got to pre-plan for him. He might be someone that he might be a must-have next week. And the amount of cash in you might just lose by not going to him could be very punishing. So he's someone that you got to factor into next week. Armstrong, 199k. A lot of us wanted to start him, but we couldn't because of the injury. If he comes out with 2 good games, 199k, I think that has him technically priced at, I think it's like 17, but I'm just going to look rather than guesstimating. So his average last season will tell us what he's priced at, 16.2. So yeah, just under that 17. So if he can come out and be a guy that's 24 points a game, that's basically 100k underpriced, and definitely something I think he could do, because he has a lot of guys around him that like to score points, and I think he could really facilitate them. I would like to see, the only problem with trying to facilitate Rob Edwards is he's going to dribble the ball a bit more and make a bit of a move and take away from your assist. But someone that's really interesting there. And then the other one that I think people aren't thinking about right now, and it is Tanner Groves. And that might sound really weird because it's like Groves had an awful game. He got into foul trouble early. Cairns found a good groove with the team when he was on the bench. So they sort of just ran with that team and they managed to get a win. But in reality, Groves is pretty good in my opinion. You take out that foul trouble. What's happened here is a similar thing to Doolittle last year. Doolittle got injured in the first 2 minutes of the game, got a -2, lost a ton of money, went from this 277k import down to this like 180k import, and then was basically worth, almost 300, like he was worth over 300k later on in the year. And if you could have got on him on the right time, you could have gone massive. And the thing with Groves is he could fall into this category. He had a really, really, really poor game, and his first game doesn't actually count towards his Supercoach score. So he ended up getting 12, which is actually much higher than I thought he actually got. So that's impressive in itself that he played 10 minutes and still put out 12 Supercoach points in a game that was really poor from him. But his break-even 61. That's actually not as high as I thought it would be. Damn, I was kind of hoping for a bit of a higher break even, but I think he's someone that we still take into account because next week's trade-ins, Cairns do have 5 games over 3 weeks. They will be a team that we wouldn't mind getting on, considering I think only 2 teams have the double next week. Oh no, 3 teams, Sydney, Adelaide, and Cairns. So someone that you could get on. With the 61, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets close to 61, which is awesome. If he gets close to 61, it means that he won't really lose money, so he'll stay around this starting price, but then his break-even will go rocketing down. This man has a 12 in his cycle, and he's only got a 61 break-even on a double. If he ends up having a 61 on the double, you would think that this break-even drops much closer to towards this sort of 30 to 40 mark sort of thing, and then he could be someone that could make a bit of money after that. So I think he's also someone that you could consider, someone that you do want to maybe put a bit of planning in for next week. But yeah, they're all guys that you need to consider for next week as well. I don't think they're must-haves. I just thought I'd bring them up. But McCoy could be a must-have. Armstrong maybe could be a must-have as well. And if they're a must-have next week, that puts you in a position where one trade's going to them. So let's just say, for example purposes, I go like a Hickey to a Glover. Then what am I doing with that second trade? If you're someone that you've got a Bryce in your team, if you've got a Magnay in your team, if you've got a lot of these guys that only have the single double week, you will leave yourself very thin for round 4. So just something to definitely keep in mind when you are making this trade. That you're thinking next week, yeah, I got 2 trades, I could even boost, and I could definitely move around these premiums, but there could be rookie must-haves, and I don't want to leave myself in a position where I have to boost to get a rookie must-have at this point in the season. I'd much rather put my team in a position where it's being pre-planned that one trade is going towards the must-have, if it's, which I think there is a good chance that could be the case, and then one trade goes towards moving premiums. It does that. The only problem with that is it can leave me a bit thin this week. So lose points this week, make up for next week. We'll figure it out. But I guess I'll show you the options that I am considering. So the very first obvious option, I think, in my eyes, Henschel's obviously a must-have, so you just got to bring him in. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Not somebody that's on him. I've already talked about this in the Supercoach Hub, but Glover scored 25 points over 3 games. Henschel scored 27 in 1. Could have just started Henschel, got a did not play, didn't lose the money from Glover, and I also earned 2 more total points if you did. So that sucks. And it also means that if you're not trading Henshaw in this week, you could be doing other things with your trades. You could get on a Prather, you could get on a Pepper, you could get on a Magne plus, a Trez and a Davis sort of thing. But unfortunately, in my situation, I just have to make the trade here. Now, you have Pepper versus Henshaw. In my opinion, from what I saw, Pepper looks a lot more score-orientated, and Henshaw does look like I think he can score in other ways. Webster's also a question mark for their first game of the round, and if he doesn't play, that does bring up a question that can Henshaw actually be an on-field option? If he's going to play 20 plus minutes on the court, we see that he has the ability to put out big Supercoach numbers. So something else that you could potentially be watching closely to make that sort of decision. I think the other thing on Henshaw over Pepper is just the forward guard eligibility is way too nice to pass up. So we'll just start off with bringing Henshaw into our team because that's just a must. It has to happen. Leaves 105k in the bank. Now these are the two options I'm sort of floating with. I think Days has to go. That's just another thing that they've got 3 singles in a row. Yeah, he might make money, but that's a lot of money sitting on my bench. So I'd much rather move him on and get someone else in the team. Now, honestly, this is where it's pretty painful because, Will Magne, as I mentioned, he's got that just really, really good break even. I'm going to go Cairns, Adelaide. Technically Perth are on it, but I'm not going to pick up any Perth players. And then Melbourne's on it as well, so I'm not going to go for any Melbourne players. So these are the 3 teams I'd be interested in. And it's mainly Adelaide and Cairns. Lat Main could be someone else that you need to target next week as well, so someone else to keep on mind. But Willie Magne, as I mentioned, that break-even's too good. He scored 56 in this game. What happens if he comes out with this 70 points? What happens if he comes out with 80 points, earns 50k, good captain option? I could really see him dominating Cairns as well, which is really, really scary. Perth, I think, maybe a little bit harder to dominate, but technically his history against Perth is insane. They're not the biggest team, though, and yeah, Magne's playing big minutes, so I just think Magne could be really, really good, and it's so painful to not go for him. There's a reason he's the most traded in, but we'll go through the first iteration of my team. So we could go Harrell in, and then it's either Adams out or Illy out because I want KD. So I'm just going to bring KD in for now, and then it's a matter of who's going out. In this case, honestly, yes, I know Delhi could miss. What he scores, let's say 30 points with Delhi missing. Maybe he scores 20 in his next game, scores 50. His break-even's 58. He'd probably lose cash on that. Adams, honestly, maybe he gets 35, so gets outscored by 15, but his break-even's 37, so roughly the same price. But then the following week, Adams is on a double, and Illy's not on a double. And I think that's something that you can take into account, that over the next 2 rounds, they both technically have 3 games. So, do I want to bring in Illy, who could lose serious money this week? If he comes out with another 27, he could lose some serious money. Or would I feel more comfortable with Adams in the team, where it's like his price doesn't really matter too much because he's good enough that next week he could just be a captain option, and I believe in him to put down big points. So I think, personally, I've decided that I will go Illy out over Adams. And so we're just going to save this team for now, just so we can see what it looks like. So 103k in the bank, super nice. I think the bench, perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that. We have, the only problem here is we have 3 guys on double game weeks. Only 3. And then I got to run Oliver and Adams, and that's kind of clunky. And that's what I talked about giving up points this week. It gives up massive points this week going for this. If Adams can get close to Illy, it's not really giving up massive points. But then what, Oliver versus a Magne? Oliver scores, let's say, 30 and Magne scores 70. Oh, that sounds painful. That sounds so painful. As I mentioned, I guess the other iteration here is instead of going for Harrell is I could go for Magne. Sorry, I actually want to talk a little bit more about this iteration before I start changing things around. But then I need to take into account the next week's trades. So next week's trades, let's just say Hickey goes out for McCoy. That puts, let's just say he earns 10k. It's going to put like 70k in my pocket. I'm going to have 170k in my salary. I'm going to have 4 guys on the double. And basically enough money to just really do what I want. I can bring in Wardenberg for Zakowski. and he can go with Aldridge and flip into my forward line. I could do the same with Groves. That's an option. And I can afford to hold White because of that as well, which would be really nice. If Aldridge's break even maybe ends up bad and Zukowski fixes his up a little bit, maybe just Aldridge goes out, that much money, I could really do anything sort of with it, because that should be pushing to like 320k, 170k on top of Aldridge. So I should be, once again, pretty set with who I want to get. And it sets me up really nice for next week. So next week I definitely get the 5 players on the double. I get in what could be a must-have rookie. And then the rest of these guys are hopefully just making money chill-billing. So I think that sets me up really nice for the following week. So a poor week this week, but then a good week 4. Now, as I mentioned, if I do end up changing this to, like, let's say Magne, the problem with that is it kind of just, like, ruins me hard. And what I mean by that is, so now I have 2 guys who aren't on the double. Even if I, first of all, I've lost a bit of money here because a bit of extra money to Magne, 40k. So if Hickey still goes down to McCoy, put 70k on top of that, 130k. Zukowski can't really get to too many guys at that point. Maybe he can get to a Warningberg. Maybe I can move him to like a Lat Mayan and play a Lat Mayan on field. But then I'm only playing 4 guys on the double next week. Unless I want to boost, which I probably wouldn't want to boost. Is Magne good enough to play on a single and sort of yin-yang him with Oliver? It's definitely an option there because Magne has a double whenever Oliver basically has a single. So, yeah, let's say this coming week, Magne on the double, Oliver on the single. Next week, Oliver's on the double, Magne's on the single. Week after that, Magne's back on the double, Oliver's back on the single. So it just works really well. And Magne's also on that week where it's just New Zealand and Taz on the double. So someone that could be massive. And the thing is, if you don't get on him now, what happens if he makes 50k this week? And then he makes another 30k next week, and you end up paying almost 400k for him? Like, that's a lot of money. That's so much money in there. I think that's what I'm terrified of, getting priced out of him before their next double. And then maybe just having the anti-pog Magne. Like, that just doesn't sound good. I just don't like that at all. But I'm definitely more of a fan of Harrell in the field. As I said, with this strategy, unless I'm looking to maybe move Aldridge instead of Zukowski, the extra 60k there, it still wouldn't really get me to Harrell. So maybe I'd have to go White to Harrell the following week. It becomes a lot more, I think, clunky with the follow-up trades. So I'm not really too much of a fan of this, which I kind of hate. I can't even make that work if I wanted to, because I was like, what happens if I was to not trade Davis instead? Let's just say Davis goes back to Illy. Gosh, can I just type Illy in? No, I'm just going to be too lazy about this. I'm too silly for this. Let's go undo. Let's bring Illy in, and then I can just go Davis out. Technically, I get another trade elsewhere. It's not like I can get a Harrell anywhere anyway. I can't get him from an Aldridge or any of these guys, so it doesn't really work holding Illy. Yeah. I mean, maybe this could work. Maybe but then if I hold Illy the following week, I end up with only 2 guys on the double. It's just not good. I just don't like it at all. So that was one of the options that I was weighing up, and probably the one that I'm most likely to go with is this Harrell play. I do think this is probably the best option. The other one that I'm considering, which it's going for Warnenberg. And I'm not really as much of a fan of this, but the way this one would work out is obviously Warningberg's got the double-double just like Harrell, but it puts a lot more money in my pocket to just sort of guarantee getting back on Harrell next week. So Hickey goes down 70k, 220k, on top of Zukowski. Aldridge goes down, and boom, we bring in Harrell. And the next week we still have the 5 players on the double. And Warningberg, because he has a good break even, could make a lot of money as well. He's got that 9 break even. If he gets 40 points, he's making 30k. I just don't feel as comfortable with Warningberg. He just doesn't feel like a premium to me. And I'm definitely scared of him. Even if he drops 220s, it's not the end of the world. He gets 40, which isn't bad. He makes 30k. It's not the end of the world. But I'm just not as much of a fan of this. I think there was a planning in next week as well. What else was I considering? Say I did Zukowski out for McCoy instead. Aldridge goes down. McCoy comes in here. No, there's not really too much I'd do after that anyway, so I'd probably just play around with Hickey. But yeah, definitely a tough week. The pilot, I've been playing around with it a lot, and I probably needed to actually map this out before I just started talking about it. But that's something you've got to keep an account for next week, guys. It's not just the trades you're doing this week. It's how is it affecting next week. Is there potential must-have players that we do have to account for? I do think there is. So I'm just going to quickly move this back to Trez instead. Oh, I do remember what I was doing, actually. Because instead of Warningberg... Sorry, instead of... Nah, there's no way it was Days. How was I making this work? I was definitely doing Warningberg up from Zukowski. Maybe I should just... Let's just quickly undo all of this. Because this wasn't quite what I wanted to look at. Because I wanted to get Zukowski up to Warningberg. And then, I think that's because I was going for the Adam route. So if I went for Adam out instead for KD, yeah, then that leaves all this money where I can do this instead, sort of thing. Puts a lot more money in my pocket as well. Break evens, Henschel, thank you. So puts good money in the pocket. What this means is Warningberg comes in and covers... Nah, I've messed up somewhere here too, because now I'm holding Days, and I didn't want to be holding Days either. Could I actually hold Adams and go Days instead of Illy? Is that what I wanted to do? Sorry, update. Illy out. Okay, it doesn't like that right now. Let's just quickly reset. Sorry guys, I know that we're just going through my thoughts here, but I just want to make sure I get this all right. Yeah, because... Was I looking at Henschel at the top instead? Yeah, maybe I was looking at that. So let's update. Illy goes out. Oh gosh, I think I messed this up really bad. Because I need to get Henschel, I think, to the top when we move Zukowski out. So Aldridge goes down. Days goes out. Henschel goes up. White goes on. Nah, that still just doesn't look right. That looks clunky. I feel like I had a better play in mind, but I've definitely lost it. Okay, let's stop rambling about this. Let's just wrap this all up. So we're just going to quickly go for the most likely trades that we will be doing, which will just be... Where is Harrell? Maybe if I go to averages, this will work better. Harrell, KD, Glover, get out of my team. Break evens, and Henschel. Cool, let's get them back into the team. This is the most likely route that I'll be going for. I'll also go for the, I think, a bit of a high versatility with KD. Probably a lower floor, but I feel a higher ceiling. I feel like he's going to get it together. He's also going on the Thursday night, which I bloody love. And then captain options this week. I do think if you've held on the Bryce Cotton, cooking it, fellas. You have to go for Bryce. Like, you didn't hold on to this guy for 450k, 90 break even if you don't captain him this week. I think behind, so if you've got Bryce, you're captaining Bryce. If you're bringing in Magne, I think you're bringing in Magne because you're expecting a massive one, so you got to captain him as well. You're thinking 70 plus, he's going to make at least that 45k, he's going to be awesome. Captain Magne, I would think. Then for the guys that aren't going for the Magne captain or the Bryce captain, you've got the Harrell versus Davis. As I mentioned, I think Harrell higher floor. I think he's a 60 easy. Where I think Davis is maybe the 50, but I think the higher ceiling. So that's why I want to go for Davis myself. And then finally White, who looks like he finally got it all together a bit more this week. I mean, that 48 was massive. If he can just have a bit of an uptick from that 23. If he actually shows up for both halves of the game, able to put together, let's just say 35 in one game, and then hopefully something around that in the second game. 70 points is nothing to sneeze at. So I would love to, I'd put him as the fifth option as well. Yeah, I know that's a lot of captain options, but I think Bryce, if you have Bryce, if you have Bryce, you probably don't run Magne because you probably don't have both of them on the double games without the follow-up next week. So I think if you got Bryce, you're captaining Bryce. If you got Magne, you're captaining Magne. I think if you have both, technically Bryce would be priority, I would say, for the captaincy. Saying that he is coming into Melbourne and Taz, which are good defensive guards. And then if you don't have either of these guys, yep, Adelaide, make your pick on your high risk or high reward. And White's just a bit more of a pod pick if you I think he has good matchups this week too, White. I could definitely see him having a good game. Definitely having a good game. So I think he's maybe just a bit more left of field pick. I'm actually going to just quickly go to players again. We're just going to quickly look at the whole competition. And we are just going to look at the most captained, which, yep, Bryce, Willie, Cooks, and Adams obviously don't make sense. That's the guys that haven't updated it. But then Trez is up there, White, and Davis is actually a pod captain. Did not realize that. Going against the grain I am here. But yeah, I think my reasoning for that is I thought Davis was pretty poor in both these games and managed to put out some good scores. He also is fired up from Olgan, and I think he's going to come out with some massive games here, so I'm really keen for that. So yeah, that's going to be my team for the week, guys. As I said, we're expecting to take a step backwards this week, but we're going to make up for it by making a big leap in round 4. But till next time, guys, I really appreciate all those that stayed to the end of the video. Peace, later.